It may not surprise you to know that I'm Kimberly HayDay,
And I'm Amanda Day,
and you're listening to Fundraising HayDay,
where we cover the how-tos of grants and fundraising.
how we can all do a better job of changing the world of philanthropy together.
Yep. And our Patreon subscribers, like our guest Julie Boll here, get these episodes early. So last year, Julie came and joined us for a special bonus episode where she interviewed Kimberly and I, and we all had so much fun that we decided it's not going to be a complete year without having Julie back to do the same thing. And this year's topic is centered around being unapologetically profitable, which I know a lot of people kind of cringe when they start talking about money and what you're worth and all that good stuff. But these are good conversations we need to have, and there's no better person to have that with than Julie. So welcome back to the show, Julie.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back in the interviewer seat and really just unpack your stories. So we know each other. We've been, kind of in community together for a couple of years doing and practicing this courage building work. So I reached out a few weeks ago and said, hey, I have a semi-viral post right now, and I have more engagement with this one post than an entire year's worth of activity. And it was a spin on the propaganda I'm not falling for trend on LinkedIn. And I was getting ready to give a workshop on this unapologetically profitable. And I just, was like, hey, perfect for this propaganda post. I'm going to write about it. And that interest to me was a huge indicator that this is something we need to talk about. This is something that is hitting a nerve. If you think about what we do, we're in a very service-based industry. Charging and actually making a profit in the quote unquote nonprofit space can be really kind of icky. So I was like, hey guys, can we talk about this? Because you guys are both consultants. You've both had your own businesses. You have your joint business. I know a few of your stories, and I hope that I know more after we're done, like where you've had to lean into, yes, this is what my expertise is worth. And yes, this investment is worth it to a nonprofit or an entity or a group. So anyway, I thought you guys would be the perfect group to kind of unpack this skill set, the beliefs that come with being unapologetically profitable in a nonprofit space.
Wow. Okay, we're ready.
Okay. So I'm a coach and a facilitator. I facilitate courage building in the nonprofit sector and just have fallen into supporting the consultants as well. So these are the things that we deal with. The beliefs that come up when we think about charging what we're worth. So I want to just ask the two of you, if you can think about a time where you really had to dig deep and put a number on something that felt scary to you, or learn something new and put something new into the universe. Anything come to mind that we can pull apart for a little bit?
There are two things that came to mind right when you said that, so I'll just start there. One is about this time last year, maybe it was October of last year. Amanda remembers this. I had two clients decide that they couldn't use my services anymore because their board told them to get rid of all extraneous contracts. So it wasn't we hate the work you're doing. It wasn't our time here. It was just like, oh, we have to do this. And because what I learned, I knew that our contracts were coming up for renewal, but I was like, that's all good. We'll get to it. No, because there was a sort of a grace period, and that's in that grace period is when they were able to say, we're in a grace period, we don't have a new contract yet. And so that's what they did. So two major clients in a week and a half. And
yes,
it was horrifying, but part of it was understandable, but the other part was on me. I'm like, you can't assume. These were both folks that I had worked with for at least 2 years or more. And it's true. We didn't have our contract in place yet. We were getting ready to get some, and they didn't give me the notice that they would have had to have given me in a contract. And that's, I think, on me for confusing a long-term partnership with a sort of a level of informality that ended up hurting me. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but yeah, I was like, oh, well, here we are. And so I tap danced and you know, went to Amanda and was like, holy crow, what am I going to do? And so she helped me. Other folks reached out. I made some contacts and I thought everything was going great until after the election. I had signed 2 new contracts specializing in federal grants. And then if you're thinking back, even though it seems like 5 years ago, in January, then the federal grants stopped. And no one was trying to steal money off of me. No one was trying to hurt me. It was just a series of, what are those books? A series of really unfortunate, no good events.
Yeah.
Lemony Snicket. I was Lemony Snicket, if that is the right way to interpret that. And so as a follow-up to that, so it was just me going, one was me being like, oh, we're all good, we're all working together. And the other one was me going, wow, that's some really shitty circumstance that just went down, and you're just going to have to go out again and make this happen again. So one of the clients actually that did the thing came back starting in June or July, starting wanting to meet with me again. And it really did feel, I was like, okay, that y'all, I don't know. And then I was like, if I go back, I'm raising my rates.
Yes.
A point that feels better for me. And if they don't want to pay it, this is an hourly client for a lot of reasons, good ones. And I was like, hey, well, this is what I charge now. And
Yes.
this is what I do. And it sort of changed the tenor of our working relationship. And in the end, I think it's going to be better for them because it's going to be more money for them.
So a year ago, unexpectedly, 2 contracts didn't renew.
They were big ones.
Yeah. So kind of because we have a little time that has elapsed since then, walk me through what you had to do and what you had to believe to get to the contracts that you did secure in early 2025, and then kind of pull some of these lessons out for us.
I think the biggest thing was I know I can find what I need out there if I just let people know. I don't know how else to say that. It was me. I think you were talking about your viral LinkedIn post. Amanda is so much better at connecting with people on LinkedIn. I'll share, but just a little bit, because I'm like, it's just I think it's just a difference. And it's also maybe a difference in age as to how comfortable we are sharing things. I mean, I think we just need to acknowledge that. And so I just sat down and I was like, okay, LinkedIn, these things just happen. My bathroom ceiling caved in after Hurricane Helene. I just lost 2 clients. And sometimes you just have to. And everybody was like, by everybody, it got a lot of interaction. And I wasn't even looking for it. I was just going, hey, these things can happen. And I'm bigger than these things. And I know that something will come of this. And I just need to just be open to it and ask and tell as many people as possible. So maybe in the back of my mind, I was going, well, I'll just say it, and maybe there'll be people who will contact me. And also at that year's Grant Summit, which is the annual conference for the Grant Professionals Association, if people aren't familiar, I was like, and Amanda said, well, you could talk to this person or that person. And I'm like, I can talk to this person and this other person. And it was sometimes it felt a little awkward, but most of the time I was just like, hey, I'm open to these things and just let me know. So I think it was being open to talking about it, because I feel like a lot of consultants, we're supposed to know everything and have everything perfectly under control. And I'm happy to share that as a consultant, those were some scary moments I am in a marriage and my husband is working and has a good job. We weren't going to lose the farm, but it was going to be a hard candy Christmas,
Yeah.
as the Parton would sing. And so it was being okay sharing that and hoping to make connections and just knowing that something would come of it. And then in January, I'm like, wow, okay, this is the things, all the work that I thought I was going to get from January to May didn't pan out. A few other things came in, and just sort of trusting and knowing that I didn't need to panic. I still had some revenue coming in, and it's going to be okay, and just be okay with the ups and downs. But this was particularly mountainous ups and downs, I would say.
Well,
Absolutely.
I know you won't mind me sharing this, Kimberly, too, for anybody who's listening, thinking, oh, she had all this go wrong. And Kimberly just went right into, I'm going to fix it mode. There were certainly a few days of, oh, crap, the sky is falling. Like, there was some panic in there of what do you do next? So,
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I remember having contact with the story at various points a year ago and watching you, one, raise your hand, like you said, and say, hey, this is what's going on, and talk about these things that do happen through no fault of our own and normalize it for the community, which is one of the things that I love that you guys do. But I also remember putting yourself back out there and renegotiating even bigger contracts at that time. And so what it takes to take process, draw a conclusion about your value and your worthiness, raise your hand, secure a new contract, secure a new rate, and then here we are like repeating that same muscle again for an unprecedented season. Nobody has seen what we saw this year, what we are seeing this year. We are still, in a very uncertain, turbulent time, but it's really interesting to kind of watch that skill set. That's what I wanted to pull apart. It's not accidental. There's a lot that happened in that loss of two contracts, the processing, the raising your hand, the speaking up, the negotiating the new contracts at the higher rate, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden we had these new clients that were better fit than the previous client. And then, of course, now here we are. And I didn't know this part of the story of, what's happened with this year. But once again, you're normalizing the fear that's happening and rippling through our nonprofit sector around investment. So
I
I want
mean,
to talk.
yeah, I was just going to say it all makes a lot of sense. And Amanda's right. I think it's also very important not to sink into it, but to go ahead and let the panic just flood you, and then
Yes.
open the door or the little plug and let it flow. Because how can you not? I'm not 22 years old and like, oh, I'll make it up. I'm like, whoa, this is we have goals. And so I think it's important also to normalize that. It's like, yeah, have your big old freak out, be as kind to yourself as you can, and then, okay, it's almost like if I hadn't processed it, then it would have made it that much worse to try and move through it. If I had said, oh, well, I'll be fine. It's like, no, I need to go through the holy, oh my God, these things, the bills, the this, the that, the Christmas, I don't know if I shared this with you, Julie, but right at that time, I had, and then I'll shut up and let Amanda talk because I know I'm totally hogging this, but, it was right around my birthday when all this was going down, the worst of it. And I had planned, and Amanda's heard this before, but I had planned a birthday lunch where my idea was I wanted to bring together friends and relatives, family from different parts of my life that had never really necessarily met each other. I mean, there was some commingling, but I have different interests and different places where I go for whatever to feed my soul. And so I was like, let's do this thing. And the thing was a simple lunch at a local Greek restaurant. And when all this happened, my first thought was, I got to cancel. I'll pay the deposit because I was paying for it. I was like, I want to host everyone. I want everyone to come together. And my first thought was, I can't possibly do this. This is irresponsible and wrong. I can't. Then I was like, yeah, I don't want to not do it. It's just going to work out. And I'm saying that coming from a super privileged position that a lot of people cannot be in. And I accept that. I also have credit. And so I was like, okay, that's what American Express is for. This is what we're doing. I'm going to do it. And it was so wonderful. And I didn't ask for gifts. In fact, I didn't even think about it, right? But I didn't do the thing that people are like, don't bring gifts. So I was just like, oh crap, how am I going to pay for this? Y'all come, see you. Here's the pizza. And people gave me gifts, and my family and other that actually helped pay for the whole bill. Not, I mean, not the whole bill, but I mean, it was just, I was just like, oh, and it was so nice. It was just so nice to see all these people from different parts of my life in the same big room.
It was
And Amanda was there. And it was just, I guess I'm saying that to say the panic was still there, but I tried to just feel it and not act on it, if that makes any sense. I just was like, oh, but it was like, okay, but don't do anything yet. Don't do anything yet. Just keep going the way you were going to. And I think that's a big muscle to exercise. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I had not heard this story. It's a beautiful story, especially since you have a little bit of space between
Yeah.
when it happened and now to really kind of think about how much courage it took to say, no, I'm still going to celebrate. I just got this gut-wrenching news. I'm scared about the future and I'm worth celebrating. So you took the scorecard. So I'm actually going to stay on you for a minute if you don't mind. You took this courageous leadership scorecard. And what I love about it is like we can start to point to skill sets here. We're talking about self-compassion. We're talking about self-trust. We're talking about values. We're talking about shame resilience, knowing that you're worthy of this celebration. I think that's a stunning example. And it's funny, we kind of want to get to the end and have this nice little bow before we tell our stories, but that's it. It's when you're in the mess and you don't have evidence that everything's going to be okay and you still say, I'm worth it. That is stunning. So I do want to point to your scorecard because you took it before we got on
Yeah.
this call. And I want to just kind of point to some remarkable scores that I saw on here that I hear reflected in your story.
Okay.
Um, After setbacks, I am able to process, let me pull this up, integrate my learnings and get back on track. I view failures as learning opportunities and use them to strengthen my leadership. I am resilient and use curiosity and perspective taking as tools. So I just I was really touched when I saw your scores, like vision and values. Man, we have some tens in here. I give myself permission to envision a bigger vision for my life. As an
All the time.
author,
All the time.
yeah, yeah, somebody who is so committed to a craft that you may never get the evidence that external validation that you deserve. Um, and then number 10, another number 10, I'm clear on the behaviors and practices that are in alignment with my values, and those are out of alignment. So there was just some really, really strong self-report scores here that I think tie into your story of processing, allowing yourself to that emotional agility, allowing yourself to feel the feeling, and then choosing to be kind and loving towards yourself and still have a celebration for yourself. I think it's a remarkable story. Thank you for sharing it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Amanda, what came up for you when you thought about like a moment where you kind of had to dig in, maybe share a new rate, launch a new thing? Can you kind of
yeah.
point to something? Yeah.
Um, I will tell you, probably one of the hardest times in my career is when I went from I'd been working for a training company, which was steady income, and that allowed me to slowly build my consulting business. And so the nice thing about it, at that time, I had a lot of clients that were kind of would come to me regularly, but it was just for like, hey, can you write this one grant for me? And they kept coming back, but it wasn't steady monthly income. But it was fine because I had this training gig, right? Well, after the pandemic hit and that slowed down a little bit. But really, it was the fact that my family was like, we kind of like you being at home instead of traveling all the time. We want you to quit your training job, like if you don't mind, right? And so I made the decision to do that and ramp up my training company. No, not my training company, my consulting clients. And it was probably a tumultuous year just because not knowing what to charge exactly, not knowing, do I want to just have five all the time clients? Do I want to keep some one-offs that I love? And you're getting, everybody has different advice, right? There's some people that are like, yes, hourly works. Other people, no, don't ever charge hourly. You have to have a retainer. Other people are like, don't say no to any client whatsoever when you're building it. And so I was saying yes to a lot of things that I think if I had taken a pause to really think about, I wouldn't have, because it just added more stress to my life. And what ended up working out, one of the things I said yes to, which actually did work out, was I said yes to it was actually a larger consulting firm that their grant person was to the max and needed some consulting. So, but they paid me less than my direct service clients. But I was fine with, because I wasn't dealing with clients, I was overflow. It was a lot easier. So I was like, yeah, sure. Well, they kept wanting me to give them more and more hours, to the point where I was like, okay, I'm fine with that, but you're going to have to start paying me more, because that means I'm going to have to drop some direct service. And so I'm going to need that to come up. And then they came back with, well, what if you just become an employee of ours instead? And so that was probably the first time in my career where I was like, sure, but this is what you're going to pay me. And realizing if I didn't start setting some boundaries and some guidelines, because not that I charge my clients a reasonable rate, but like I said, I was saying yes to a lot of things and doing things that I probably should have had better boundaries on. So that would be the first time I was like, "You're gonna pay me this." And I remember the boss of the company that I first time I had met with him was like, "Is that really a fair wage?" And I'm like, "Well, that's what you're gonna pay me if you're gonna get me." And so he agreed to it. So
That's it. That's it. That's
yes,
why I want us to talk about these stories, because so often we won't even raise our hand. We won't even speak up and say the thing. Because our brains make up these stories about what might happen if we do. They'll walk away. I'll never get work. So I do this exercise with clients all the time. And it usually ends in, and then I'll be destitute. Like I'll be on the curb and I
clearly,
won't be able to feed
all
my
right.
children or whatever. I mean, our brains are very, very creative at filling in those gaps. So I love that we can tell the story after the fact, because you're going to raise your rates again. You're going to put something new into the universe again. And we want to trace it back to, hey, remember that time I told that client or that business, this is what it costs to have me. But actually, I want to go back for a moment to quitting the training job. You are a phenomenal front of the room
Oh, thank
speaker. I many people who've been in the field know that. I can remember being in the room and being like, shit, she's good. Like you're just very, very good. So I can imagine that that would have been hard to walk away from. It's interesting because I have a grant writing track record as well, and it took me a while to build it up. And I don't do grants now. It's really hard to walk away from something you have a track record in for an unknown.
you.
And so I kind of want to talk about what came up for you when you had to say that, when you chose to say, I'm not doing the training job anymore. What
Yeah.
were some of the fears that were showing up?
Um, I mean, the biggest thing for me, the whole reason, and I'll go back to the reason I had started with the training company, is I had been employed full time somewhere. It just wasn't working for my family life balance. And so my husband from the get-go was like, start your own consulting firm. You can do it, I have no doubt. But I was terrified of but what if there's some months where I don't bring in money, or what if there are clients that leave, or what if I mean, all the things that we all have to deal with as consultants. And so the training gig was the perfect, okay, this is steady income. And I didn't know I would like it as much as I did. And I mean, that's when I was like, okay, this is my thing. I enjoy grant writing, but I love teaching other people how to write grants even better. So I really did love that job, but I've always tried to find a way to balance doing what I love, but part of what I love the most is my family. And so when all three of them, my husband and my two children, were like, "Mom, we really do miss you when you're gone, you know?" And when I'm gone traveling all the time, I'm the one that's away, so I'm not seeing what's happening when I'm home and them missing me as much. And I mean, I miss them too, but you're on the go, you're on the go, you're on the go. And so having been home for a long stretch and realizing how nice that was, it made it easier to walk away from that. And at that point, Kimberly and I had the podcast going, so I did have some other creative outlets. We hadn't started HayDay Services yet at this point. But because it was right for my family, it wasn't terribly hard to walk away from, but I was still terrified, which is why every potential client that got dumped in my lap. I mean, took on a client that literally had no budget. Like when I was like, "Can I see your budget?" They're like, "Well, we don't. We just kind of money in, money out." That's insane, right? So that was a headache. I took on a hospital that was a great hospital and really desperately they did not have enough services for the people that they needed. But they were like chicken with their head cut off and had they didn't have any organizational planning, and anytime I tried that, they were just no, the money, the money. So it wasn't the right fit, right? So I took on that was my hardship. It wasn't so much as leading the training company because I knew that was the right thing, but it was not knowing I needed to take some time and figure out what I wanted to do next instead of just going, sure, all the things because I need all the money to pay all the bills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a trap a lot of consultants fall into as well, is this idea that you have to say yes to everything.
Hmm.
And that people will value you more if you say yes to everything. So, um, and we know from experience, all it does is it drains our capacity and it removes our opportunity to say yes to the right fit things. So Kimberly, again, since I have her scores, really, really strong here. She's a 10. She's a solid 10 on I say no when an opportunity or request doesn't align with my values, capacity, and needs. Kimberly, how does this show up for you?
It's something that I need to keep practicing is how it shows up.
Yeah.
Like you made a post the other day about yoga, and it's like, I'm coming back for practice because if I don't do it, then I'll have a month like July where there were a lot of people in this same boat where all the work that was supposed to come at the first part of the year came in July, and I had been gone traveling during June, and I was like, these are my colleagues, and I really admire them and like them, and I really want to help. So yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I had my regular clients where I had been like, I'm going to be gone for this block of time, but when I come back, here's all the things before I leave. But when I come back, we're going to hit it. And it all came at once, and it came so hard that there were 7 grants due in a week. And
Unbelievable.
looking back, I was like, probably should have said no to one of the outreaches that came in. And next time you're really gonna need to step back and get into that practice. Like I'm super bad at contemplative prayer, which is something I go to retreat center, and I've been doing it for years. And I suck at it. I mean, hardcore bad, but I keep doing it. And I think that's what this is to go, wow, that was really painful and ugly. Decent payout, but was that, maybe I need to just take a breath next time and say, I already had this work planned coming back. I can do this, or I can help you, but I can give you 10 hours, or I can't write this, but I can review it. And just carefully set some boundaries, because it was hard on me, it was hard on my husband, and I'm sure Amanda was delighted to be around someone who was completely stressed. So I think it's something that it was just like what happened in October and just like what happened in the spring. It's like, this thing has happened, feel bad, feel your feelings, and now
Yeah.
we're going to fix it. And
Yeah.
now we're going to fix it. And again, these are just business fluctuations, which brings me to something. If people are thinking about, well, I don't want fluctuations, that's too stressful, then you may want an approach like what Amanda is modeling so very well is, I want some guaranteed income that allows me to work on other things that aren't guaranteed and kind of work through that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with either approach. I so do not want to be an employee anymore, and haven't for years, that I'm psychically willing to deal with it. Although it has been a bit much. It was a lot this time a year ago, but I was never like, yeah, I'm just going to go. I'm going to cast my hat in the ring and start interviewing for jobs. I won't say it never crossed my mind, but not in any serious way. So I think sometimes when you're wanting to earn what you're worth, sometimes it's a matter of how do you want to earn it and how does that fit in to you and your comfort level with the ups and downs. And there's nothing wrong with going, yeah, I'm going to negotiate a raise, but because I want that structure around me. I want benefits and I want a 401k or 403b, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with moving back and forth.
Yeah.
I think maybe where people get into trouble is where they're like, okay, I did this one thing and I have to keep doing this one thing because if I don't, I'm a failure. And that's not true.
That is where it's interesting, because it's like, why does courage building matter? This is why, because we can our brains can tell us a story about this is what safety looks like, doing the training gig, even though it's exhausting my family. So, we do, we do have to be able to think outside of those original parameters. You said something I want to zero in on. Feel bad, feel your feelings. That huge. Like that's the emotional agility piece of the more we run away from our feelings, like the harder they'll chase. It just there's so much power in what you just named. But then the other thing that comes up a lot is the mindfulness. If you are allowing those feelings to be there, you kind of get a little bit of space to choose your response in the situation. Everyone is, well, never mind. I don't want to use the word everyone. Many people are in deep distress right now. And it's really easy to be reactive. Like, I have to take this work. I have to take this work. But that feel your feelings and take a beat and actually have some mindfulness lets you make some values aligned decisions and say, okay, what's most important in this moment for me? And so I'm curious, Amanda, I saw some writing that you did around this crazy 1 week, 24-hour, just what on earth? What would you say about some boundary setting that was helpful to you in that time period, or not? If a lesson that you learned from it, whatever you want to take away. I mean, I know it's not over, but
Yeah. Um, one of the things I've learned is just the better I'm planned. Kimberly and I are very organized. Not that we were never organized, but we've gotten a lot better at organizations as far as like we have a project management system that we use to keep track of all of the things. Because I mean, it's nice having different sources of income, but it's also sometimes there's conflicting of like in an ideal world, I'll spend 20 hours a week on this and I'll spend 15 hours a week here and 5 hours here, and that's my week for all of the different parts of work that I do. But inevitably there are just the weeks that everything hits all at once. And so, but knowing that that's what's coming, or knowing that I've got, okay, these are all the things, and this is, and I feel much better when I've got lists and I can check them off and do this sort of thing. So that helps. And also knowing that it's just for a week. I can put my head down and do this for a week, but this isn't going to be my everyday.
yeah.
Every week after week after week helps with that. And then at some point, Kimberly and I are both very good about giving each other heads up, like this week or this month is going to be nuts for me outside of HayDay services. So what can we push back? What can we drop? What can maybe things that she normally does, I can do. We both, we really try to do a good job of planning like vacations. Like Kimberly said, she was out a lot of June. 2 years ago, my son was graduating. So, the last month of school was nuts. And we just kind of go into it knowing there are going to be times when one of us is picking up things more than the other, and that's okay because then the next time it's all balanced out. So that helps. Um,
So
about,
we have a shared calendar. Like,
yes.
I mean, it's gone there, and it allows me that kind of framework, though, does allow me to be so much more creative in other areas because I'm not worried about, so are we supposed to talk to that person about that thing, about that other thing? And it's like, no, chances are it's in Asana, which is, they don't pay us. That's the platform that we use, the free version of it.
Yeah.
But I think also something that I learned from you, Julie, was about minimum viable.
Oh,
some days, because I used to be like every blog post was like a drop of blood. And sometimes I'm in it and I feel it and it's done. And sometimes I'm like, I got these three things that I want to talk about. Let's go minimum viable. Let's just make it happen. Or
Yeah.
we care a lot about our speaking engagements and we want to do them. But there's a lot of admin stuff, right? That everybody has admin stuff. And it's like, we need to write a description. We need to find a photo. We need to do, and I can't tell you how many of the presentations that we have summarized in our twice weekly meetings with each other in the Zoom chat. I'm
Yeah.
like, we need to write an email. I'm like, hey, if you'll do that, I'm going to write this email. It's just being really open. And I know Amanda's heard me say this before. I'm like, I can't really make any more decisions right now.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do, I'll do.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm like, I have these ideas and I'm feeling good. But I think it's important to tell her when I'm having a day of like, yeah, like a year ago, I'm like, yeah, minimum viable, every freaking thing until I figure out my revenue again.
Yeah.
And, but we still, it's like, she had stepped in and done some things for me. I've stepped in and done some things for her. But I think what makes it work is that we don't, we say it. We
Yeah.
say it. We don't just assume, oh, well, she knows I'm having a bad time. I'm like, I am having a bad time. This
Yeah.
is what I can
And
do.
well, and I would say too, one of the things I'm going back to something you were talking to Kimberly about earlier about how she's good at saying no and setting
Yeah.
boundaries. And I can't stress enough to find people in your life, whether you've got a formal partnership with like Kimberly and I do, or whether it's just someone that you have hit it off with and you talk to and share ideas, but having someone that you can learn from each other, because Kimberly has taught me I'm so much better at setting boundaries because of my work with her, because I see her doing it in action. So it's modeled for me, but also she encourages me. So, sometimes I'll pick up the phone and be like, I got asked to do this and I really want to do it, but I know I don't really have time. But she didn't just go, Amanda, don't do it. She's like, well, she talks me through it. And usually I end up getting there myself. Right. But so having someone that models some of those things, and I'm so much better at now showing what I'm worth and wanting to charge what I'm worth because she is also good at it. Like when we start with HayDay Services creating things, I'm like, we should probably charge $50. And she's like, are you kidding me? This is like we've got 50 years of experience and we've got this and then we've got this. She goes, this is at least $3,000 worth of work. And I'm like, oh, you know what? You're right. You're right. It is. So finding, and hopefully I bring out other good stuff in you as well, but finding that person where that you can they have their strengths where you don't,
Yeah.
and so you can learn from someone else and be better at the things you need to be better at.
I love that you guys lead a community as well as support each other in a community. I mean, that normalizing the ups and downs and, processing, having a safe person to talk to about this. It's so good. So good. And then as solopreneurs, I think it can be really easy to kind of get lost in our own heads about it's just me, which is where that shame work comes in. Like it's just me. I'm the only one struggling with this. And I love that you two talk pretty openly in public channels about this kind of stuff. But I wanted to kind of just point out the skills that you're practicing because it's so, I think, natural to you, but asking for what you need. I can't show up this week. I'm going to need to step a few notches back. You're communicating to each other. And then the self-compassion. I hear it on both sides of the story. Like sometimes we just get the wind knocked out of us and we just have to be really kind to ourselves. And so, it's interesting to connect those practices and those skills to being unapologetically profitable. I know that that particular title is kind of provoking for people, but at the end of the day, of course, if we were inside an organization, we would be being paid, and that's profit. That's money that goes into our pocket as opposed to someone else's. So that's the only thing that we're protecting as solopreneurs, business owners, is that we need to actually be making money that correlates with our value. So I'm curious, I know we're wrapping up, but I wanted to kind of run by you some of the phrases in the propaganda that got so much attention and get your take on it. Have you fallen for these? Are these still kind of in the back of your mind? Or do you believe these? So charging less means you care more about the mission.
That's one thing I don't think we ever had an issue with. Like, because I mean, when you work in the nonprofit field, I mean, it's your livelihood. You can't, you know, every mission.
Although there is a strong nonprofit culture where it's like you're in you what do you mean you need more money? You're here for the people you serve. That's baked into
Oh,
at least several agencies where I have worked. And my husband used to be a public school teacher. Now he teaches for a nonprofit um, school, and that is not, I mean, that is a private school, as in charging money and doing that. And the things that get tossed on to him, he's like, what is this about? I'm like, this is because this is a nonprofit culture versus a public school culture where right or wrong, good or bad, there are real differences. I
Yeah.
think I felt actually I think I felt that more as an employee than I do now as a consultant. But it was because I spent a lot of years dancing around, do I or don't I, do I or don't I? And I did a lot of research and I talked to a lot of people. But the other thing that might throw a wrench if people are wrestling with this right now, particularly grant consultants, is that in most professional organizations that include grant consultants, including but not limited to GPA, discussing rates is considered publicly, is in their code of ethics as something that is unethical because it could lead to price setting. Is that the right word? Yeah,
yeah, or
colluding.
profitability.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So I had enough informal conversations with people to realize. But then I also, when all the bad stuff happened, I was working with someone who was kind enough to give me a referral, and she's like, I charge this. And I'm like, holy crap, I should be charging more. And she's like, yeah, you should. I'm like, okay. So, you can always learn.
So these are kind of the things I think that get stuck in the back of our mind and unconsciously drive our behavior, and really kind of sometimes even prevent us from putting our hat in the ring, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, so around, charging, what your service is, what your experience, what your expertise is actually worth, that somehow if you charge what you're worth, you don't care enough about the mission, or you should charge less if you care about the mission. And then, so these are the things that were in the post that drew a lot of attention. You should feel guilty about making a profit in the nonprofit space.
I, I don't, I disagree because you I'm just thinking about if you're a nonprofit, you pay vendors, contractors all the time. If you have a facility, you're probably paying someone to maintain the grounds. You're probably paying either the county or a private service wherever you live to pick up the garbage. You're paying your electricity bill.
You're paying your plumber. You're
I mean,
paying
yeah, you're
for
paying your
And
yeah.
not only that, but like I know a lot of people that don't work in the nonprofit space, and there have been some articles over the last few years, where it's come out about what a CEO or an executive director is making, and people are like, "But that's a nonprofit," and I'm like, "Why do you
Mm,
think that?" Well, they're like, "Well, nonprofit means not a lot of money." I'm like, "No,
oh,
nonprofit just means that they're not hoarding their money; they're bringing in money,
investing
put
in.
it right back out to the people that need it most." And I was like, "This is someone running an organization that has, say, 300 employees and they're delivering these services and doing if they were a business, they'd be making even more money than that. So I'm very outraged for nonprofit employees when people take that attitude of they
I
should make
agree.
this much money. And I'm like, and as a consultant, I'm bringing a lot to the table. I'm not overcharging you, but your return on your investment is going to be worth it. So that's something I got over really quickly. Like, yes, and the thing too is they don't have to hire me if they don't
yep.
want to,
Right.
but
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. I like the idea of holding, so in the coaching philosophy, there's this phrase, holding your clients is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. we can assume that our nonprofits can harness resources. We can assume that they can make decisions about how they want to make investments, and they can look for the talent that they want to invest in. So we don't need to take that choice away from them. We don't need to say they can't or they're unable to. They can. And many nonprofits are investing for really high caliber talent. So it's interesting that these kind of things come up, I think, a lot when consultants in particular are raising their rates or naming their rates or, you know, transitioning into a new lane, if you will, of services that they don't have the track record to go with. So if you, let me just phrase this question the way I want to phrase it. So this is the time where I'll ask for the pause. Okay. What would you, what advice would you give to grant consultants who know they're undercharging but feel stuck?
Uh, I would say first, when it's time to renew your contracts, get on ahead of that. Start 30 days before it's due. Ask me how I know. That's a great time to raise your rates. And, not if they've been the same rate for like 10 years, I don't know that I would go and double it, although, but at those times, just like at the end of the fiscal year, toward the end, a few months before, your clients start talking about their own budgets. That's a good time to do it.
Mhm.
And if you're bringing on new clients, just that's your rate.
Yep.
Is your rate, and that's it. Yeah, Amanda, go ahead.
Well, I would just say two suggestions is one, I know a great consultant that she builds into her contract that every year she bumps her rate by whatever percentage you feel comfortable with, right? So that's an
Start from the
option.
beginning. Yeah,
Yeah,
tell them from the
Train
beginning.
them that that's what happens. And I will say I had a client that I still have them today. Had started, they had gotten they were one of my first clients ever out the gate. So they had a low rate. And I just, year after year, they were easy to work with and I loved them. And so I just never raised it. And like 3 or 4 years had gone by. And I was like, they are getting me for a steal and I am bringing in. And so I, like a third of what I was charging, I added that to, and I just emailed him and said, hey, when we start our next contract, this is my new rate. I haven't raised it in this long and I'm still under I said, I'm sure you can find someone cheaper, but there are people that charge more and you know my work. And they didn't bat an eye. They're like, fine. So I was like, oh, so, and again, they could have dropped me, but then I would have gone out and found another client that would have paid. So I'd say don't let that scare you, especially if you haven't raised your rate in a while. It's time.
and if you're
It's
feeling pressured, if I could just hop in, if you're feeling pressure about, well, what about the small agencies that are just out there really struggling? So for me, I do have the best, easiest built-in answer ever is that Amanda and I have been doing a podcast since 2018, and it's free. We do have a Patreon, and you, Julie Boll, were our first paying member of our Patreon community.
woo! That's right. Thank you for recognizing my place.
Because number one, but I think I would just say, if there's that, then maybe there are things, or you can connect these folks that are really just, they're lots of resources that are good out there, not just I mean, yeah, I love our podcast, and yes, it's good, but there's other things too that are free and out there, so you can be a connector of
Mhm.
resources,
Yep.
and that can be an act of service as well. You could choose, if it fits with your lifestyle and your financial goals and your time, to do a pro bono client, but I would just be really clear about it. And I would never take a pro bono client with the idea that they're going to be a paying client, because, in my opinion, because once that starts, that's a hard. But there are things you can do without depleting yourself to the point where you might need programs and services from some of the very human service agencies that you're supporting. I mean, they're just things you can do.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about when you charge appropriately, and that's a tricky word, and I'm aware of that. for your services, you're actually helping the other people in the field as well. So it's interesting. It's been a while since I wrote grants, but when I was writing grants, I was still having people ask if it could be written into the grant award.
Oh, that's
And
still,
it's because other people are still doing it in the field. And so it's like when we do say, no, this is a valuable service, this is worth this amount, then it's like we're reinforcing that narrative. And we want that narrative to be out there instead of that narrative that you should give away your work or you should write your work into the award, things like that that are not in alignment with the value that grant professionals offer in the field, or consultants, I guess I could broaden it. So I'm glad you touched on that point because that is something that it's been a few years, but that was shocking to me that it was still happening.
Yeah.
and people who are saying, oh, I'll do it for X amount an hour, or larger consulting firms that advertise on many of the job boards that a lot of grant professionals look for jobs, whether it's contract or as an employee. And they're out, regardless of what they're charging their clients, what they're willing to pay if they post it. Some of them are so low. I'm like, you could actually, I think, have a lower stress job with the same amount of money working in retail. And I've worked in retail, and I'm not slagging it, but that there are different skill levels required. And so if you could either in the Atlanta area be a Chick-fil-A employee, for example, or Target or Publix, versus the big lift of technical skills of writing a grant because the hourly pay is about the same, that hurts everybody. You're right.
It
And
does.
it's just wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for letting me come on and kind of, hear a little bit more of your story and some of those skills that we can see that are in practice when you very maybe instinctively knew when to lean in, when to lean out, all of those things. So I love the idea that those are actually skills that can be built.
Built and practiced.
Absolutely. So,
And we can always come back to it, just like the yoga practice. There isn't a one and done. What's the word Kimberly taught me? It's a comply. You have to say it for me. Fiat. No,
Oh, fait accompli.
there we
It's not
go.
a done
Okay,
deal.
I was like, I had to look that one up. Yeah,
It's a fancy ass way of saying it's not a done deal.
never,
It's never a
never.
done deal.
It's a practice. Yes. Thank you. It was so delightful to hear more of your stories, guys.
well, thanks for
Thanks,
taking over Fundraising HayDay today with us.
So if you've ever found yourself struggling to charge your worth, or you're feeling stuck, or battling some of those limited beliefs that we talked about today, Julie is offering HayDay listeners access to her Courageous Leadership Scorecard. I actually took it right before we started recording. It was fascinating. And the scorecard can help you gain insights into your strengths and growth opportunities, and really, and maybe most importantly to this conversation, identify the skills that you would need to be unapologetically profitable. To access the Courageous Leadership Scorecard, visit juliebullconsulting.com/HayDay. And y'all know that's HayDay.
And we'll put a link in the show notes so you can find it easy. And as a bonus, we wanted to mention that Julie will be virtually presenting her Unapologetically Profitable workshop at the Grant Summit on October 30th. This year, the Grant Summit, which is hosted by the Grant Professionals Association, is taking place in Baltimore. While Julie will be there virtually, you can certainly meet her through that webinar. Kimberly and I are also attending in person, so we would love to see you there in real life.
Absolutely. And we're so glad that you could join us for our bonus content today, because sometimes we do that because you know what? It's our podcast and we can do what we want.
And when we've got a great bonus episode, why not drop it, right? So we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. We hope to see you then. Bye now.